The crystalline spires of Velthara gleamed under three suns, their light fracturing into rainbow cascades across the royal palace. But beneath the beauty lay a darkness that Princess Kalira had witnessed firsthand. The night they threw her from the cliffs of eternal sorrow. She had been merely a child then, barely 7 cycles old, with silver scales that marked her as different from the golden-hued royal family. Her father, King Morvan, had declared her an abomination, a genetic defect that threatened the purity of the bloodline. The High Council had voted unanimously. There would be no exile, no mercy, only the traditional punishment for the impure, a plunge into the acidic seas below the cliffs. Kalira remembered the cold hands of the guards, the jeering crowds, and the terrible moment of freefall. She remembered the impact, not with acid, but with something solid. A ship, a human ship. 15 years had passed since that night, and Captain Marcus Chan had never forgotten the broken, terrified alien child his salvage crew had pulled from the sea. The medical bay had been chaotic. Dr. Patel working frantically to stabilize a physiology they'd never encountered, while the child whispered in a language their translators couldn't parse. She shouldn't have survived, Patel had said, shaking her head. The trauma alone should have killed her. But humans were stubborn about death, especially when it came to children. They didn't care if those children had scales instead of skin, or 3-chambered hearts instead of 2. Marcus had made a decision that night that would define the next decade and a half of his life. Kalira would not die. Not on his watch. The Terran Salvage Guild had raised her as one of their own. Marcus became the closest thing she had to a father, teaching her to navigate stellar charts, repair quantum drives, and understand the complex web of human idioms that seemed to govern half their communication. She learned that humans valued things her people considered weaknesses: compassion for the downtrodden, defiance against injustice, and an almost pathological inability to give up. "Why did you save me?" she'd asked Marcus once when she was 12. He'd looked at her with those warm brown eyes, so different from the cold calculation she remembered in the Veltharan court. "Because you needed saving," he'd said simply. "That's reason enough." The distress signal came on a routine cargo run through the Velthara system. Marcus's ship, the Persistent Hope, was the only vessel in range. The royal palace was under siege by the Cutherax Consortium, corporate raiders who'd decided that Velthara's mineral wealth was worth more than its government. "We should jump away," said First Officer Rodriguez, his hands hovering over the navigation console. "This isn't our fight." Marcus looked at Kalira, now 22 and his second in command. Her silver scales had darkened to polished chrome, and her eyes held a wisdom beyond her years. He saw the conflict there, the memories of betrayal warring with something else, something human. "It's always our fight," Kalira said quietly, "when people need help." The Persistent Hope wasn't a warship. It was a salvage vessel with reinforced hulls and powerful engines, designed to operate in hazardous environments. But humans had a saying: any ship's a warship if you're brave enough. And if there was one thing the Terran Salvage Guild had in abundance, it was bravery bordering on insanity. They descended through a hellstorm of plasma fire, using debris fields as cover. Marcus's hands flew across the controls with practiced precision, while Kalira coordinated with Dr. Patel to prepare the medical bay for mass casualties. The palace's eastern wing had collapsed. Thousands were trapped beneath the rubble, including, according to the fragmentary transmissions, the royal family. The same family that had condemned a child to death for the crime of being different. "We can't save everyone," Rodriguez reported grimly. "The Catharax have the main courtyards locked down." "Then we save who we can," Marcus replied. For 6 hours they worked. Kalira led rescue teams through collapsed corridors, her intimate knowledge of palace architecture guiding them to trapped survivors. She didn't hesitate when she found them. Nobles who would have celebrated her death, guards who might have thrown her from those cliffs. She pulled them from the rubble with the same fierce determination Marcus had shown that night, 15 years ago. In the throne room beneath a fallen pillar, they found King Morvan. He looked up at his rescuer, and his eyes widened with recognition and horror. "You," he whispered. "The Silver One. You survived." Kalira knelt beside him, her medical scanner revealing internal injuries that would be fatal without immediate intervention. She could walk away. Let karma complete what the cliffs had started. It would be justice in a way. Instead, She lifted the pillar with the exoskeleton's assistance and gently extracted him. "Why?" the king gasped as she administered emergency medical gel. "After what we did." "Because a wise human once told me," Kalira said, her voice steady, "that needing help is reason enough." The rescue operation became a legend throughout the sector. The human salvage crew that had saved thousands of Velthorans, led by the princess who returned not for revenge but for redemption. King Morvan, confronted with the stark contrast between his culture's cruelty and human compassion, began the painful process of reform. Months later, as the persistent hope prepared to depart Velthara, the king came to see them off. His scales had dulled with age and shame, but his eyes were clear. "I cannot undo what was done to you," he told Kalira, "but I can ensure it never happens again. The council has abolished the purity laws. Children like you will be cherished, not cast away." Kalira nodded, then turned to Marcus. "Ready to go home, Captain?" Marcus smiled. "Kid, we're already there." As the persistent hope lifted away from Velthara's gleaming spires, its crew understood what humanity had always known in its bones: that home wasn't a place. It was the people who refused to let you fall, who caught you in the darkness and who taught you that the measure of civilization wasn't in the height of its towers, but in how it treated its most vulnerable. And sometimes the most human thing in the galaxy wasn't human at all.